Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to the action-packed Vaughn Manor, where it's another Hall of Adventure. It's another Hall of Adventure once again. I know, shocking. How did these books show up here? I don't know. I haven't been actually actively buying any books recently. And surprisingly, neither has Roger. He hasn't actively bought any books recently either. Well, except for a couple things. And still, books just show up here. Most of these, I believe, were pre-orders, not all of them, but some of them here. We ordered a while ago, Roger and I. Actually, just Roger did. I'm very cheap, but Roger, he just spends money like crazy. Anyway, what showed up here at the manor recently? Okay, so the first couple things I'm going to show, well, usually I show the comic book stuff first. I did get some comic book stuff, but not today. Today, the first thing I'm going to show you are a couple books that were sent to me by the kind and generous and fantastic David Wiley. David Wiley, the star of his own YouTube channel, and is also an author. He writes books, he talks about books, he's amazing, he's the amazing David Wiley. And his channel is called David Wiley. It's not called The Amazing David Wiley. It probably should be, but it's just David Wiley. He's a humble fella, that guy. Anyway, he sent me a couple books, very kindly. And the first one I'm going to show you is this one. This is Isaac Asimov, Lucky Star and the Rings of Saturn. Lucky Star and the Rings of Saturn from Isaac Asimov. I've never read any of these Lucky Star books that he wrote under the pen name Paul French. They're kind of YA books, and that's probably why I've never read them. Also because they're called Lucky Star, and I'm sure when I was younger I wouldn't touch a book called Lucky Star, but now I'm old, and I will happily read Lucky Star and the Rings of Saturn. That actually looks pretty fun, and like I said, I've never read one of these, so it should be an interesting experience. Lucky Star and the Rings of Saturn. So thank you, David, for that. And another really cool thing that David sent me is a Joe Haldeman book. But it's this one. This is World Without End, which if you look way carefully at the top, you will see that it's the new Star Trek experience. So this is a Star Trek book by Joe Haldeman, which I guess I knew about this but forgot about it. But World Without End, a Joe Haldeman Star Trek book. I really want to read that. That sounds like it would be interesting, at least. This is back from the early days when a lot of Star Trek books weren't all that great. But maybe this is an exception because Joe Haldeman wrote it. So we will find out. World Without End. I'm actually looking forward to reading this. So here we go. Star Trek. Pretty cool. Thank you, David, for sending me these books. That was very kind of you. I will set this aside now, and now we will move on to the comic books. Roger has actually been kind of active in getting comics because Roger knows that New Worlds November is almost here. It's just a couple days away. A whole month devoted to reading science fiction. It was created by the Bookish Bryants. And so we decided, since we were going to read science fiction anyway this month, Roger and I, that, we could pick up some comics that have something to do with science fiction. So we did. So we picked up a few issues of the old-timey Marvel Comics Worlds Unknown. Worlds Unknown. Now, Worlds Unknown was interesting because it was an idea that Roy Thomas had, that he wanted to adapt famous science fiction short stories and make a comic book to showcase those stories. So he came up with Worlds Unknown. So this first one has the Tales of Lurking Fear. Tales of Lurking Fear by Frederick Foll and Edmund Hamilton. And so it looks like a monster comic because those sold. And they were afraid at Marvel that perhaps if they just did a straight science fiction comic, that it might not sell as well as, say, a monster comic would. Those were different times, I guess. So yeah, they made a bunch of these science fiction comics, but they made them look like monster comics. Starting with issue number 1 of Worlds Unknown. Got a few more issues of Worlds Unknown to read next month. This is Worlds Unknown, a gun for a Dinosaur. This is issue number 2. This has stories in it from L. Sprague de Camp and Keith Lawmer in issue number 2 of Worlds Unknown. Now this is an interesting one. This is issue number 3, where we have an adaptation of the story that became The Day the Earth Stood Still. And they don't have the author's name on the cover, and I'm forgetting who wrote. It was called Goodbye to the Master, or the Master, something like that. Something to do with the Master, I think. But it is the story that became The Day the Earth Stood Still, which this is a very dramatic version of the story represented here on the cover of Worlds Unknown. Again, trying their level best to make it look like a monster comic book. So there's that, and this next one looks really cool. This one has the short story that became the Star Trek episode Arena in it. It's Arena by Frederick Brown, which is a pretty cool monster cover. It's appropriate for this issue because there is kind of an alien monster in it, where this guy on an alien planet fights the alien monster. And it became the episode where Captain Kirk fought the Gorn. And I believe, am I remembering right? Was there an Outer Limits episode that was also based on Arena? I kind of think there was, but maybe I'm making that up in my own head. Let me know. I feel like I saw that. But anyway, Worlds Unknown, number 4. And then we got Worlds Unknown, number 5. This is the last Worlds Unknown that I picked up. But it's a cool one because it's got Black Destroyer by A.E. Van Vogt. So that's pretty cool. And it's got a Gil Kane cover, so that makes it even better. So 5 issues of Worlds Unknown, which I've never read. And they've never been, as far as I'm aware, reprinted in anything, because Marvel would probably have to pay the rights to all the people that own the rights to all these short stories. So at least I've got the originals, and I can read those for New Worlds November. So wasn't that exciting? There's a few more comic book things to show you. First of all, I've got the Fantastic Four by John Byrne omnibus that just was reprinted. I believe this came out before. So this is John Byrne omnibus. John Byrne was really good on the Fantastic Four. He was good on a couple comics, X-Men and the Fantastic Four. And he didn't write all the issues in this. Some of the issues were written by Marv Wolfman and some other writers, but he drew everything. So it's pretty cool. It's a big old gigantic comic book full of John Byrne doing my favorite Marvel comic of all, the Fantastic Four. So that is cool. I also got, this is kind of sad. This is the Savage Sword of Conan. This is volume 8 of the Savage Sword of Conan, the series reprinting the great comic book magazine signed Savage Sword of Conan. And it's sad because Marvel lost the license to Conan, so this is their very last volume of the Savage Sword of Conan. And they've only reprinted, I believe, about half the series. So maybe the next publisher, Titan, I think it's Titan, will reprint more of them. We'll see. We'll see. But it's a beautiful book. They did a beautiful job reprinting these in wonderful hardcovers. I'm sorry to see the series come to an end prematurely, but you know, Marvel, you had the money. You could have kept the rights, but oh well. Let's move on to the last comic book that I got, and that is Black Panther: The Early Years Omnibus. Now, this contains a lot of the material that is in the Black Panther Epic Collection, Volume 1, which I also have, but it has a bunch of other stuff, actually. This has a lot of the earlier appearances of Black Panther, and then it moves on to the most famous Black Panther story of all, Panther's Rage. And so there's a lot of great stuff in this omnibus. It's really, really nice. And yeah, so of course, Roger had to get it. Thank you, Roger, for getting Black Panther the early years. That's pretty cool. Okay, now for regular old books. This one, Roger and I picked up recently. Actually, we had to because it's Halloween, and it's written by a bunch of our favorite BookTube friends. This is Lurking in the Dark, a HorrorTube anthology. And this one has a ton of great stories in it. R. St. Clair has a story and actually edited this, I believe. And Steve Donahue did the foreword for this. Foreword by Steve Donahue, but it also has a bunch of really cool... Pax Panic has a story in here. Hey, Pax, you've got a story. That's awesome. So Pax Panic has a story in here. A lot of great booktubers have stories in here. A.B. Frank, he who used to be known as the Bookish Report, a great channel, has a story in here. And Jason White writes excellent horror stories. He's got a story in here. A lot of people. Juan Valencia has a story in here. He just came out with his first short story collection. So that's awesome. So a lot of really cool authors have stories in this book, a HorrorTube anthology. So that's really cool. I'm going to read at least a few of them on Halloween. That'll be the cool Halloween thing I do, aside from reading Varney the Vampire, because I'm always reading Varney the Vampire, because Varney the Vampire is huge and never ends. So I've got a couple more here. I'm going to finish up with my favorite like I always do, but this one was very close to being my favorite thing that Roger picked up for me. It's very close. I like this book. It's a pretty good book, and this is the 30th anniversary edition of Anno Dracula by Kim Newman. The 30th anniversary edition. They made this fancy pants hardcover of Anno Dracula. I only have this right now as an ebook. I used to have an old paperback of this. I probably lent it out. I'm not sure, but I used to. But I was happy to get this one because I really like this book. I like the Anno Dracula books, and this is the first one by Kim Newman. And it's got cool end papers because it's extra fancy pants, this edition. And it's actually signed by Kim Newman. And I'm wondering, did they just lock Kim Newman in a warehouse and force him to sign like 1,000 books? I wonder if he's recovered. That sounds like a traumatic experience, having to sign all of these 30th anniversary editions. Maybe he didn't sign them all. I don't know. But this one is, so that makes it extra cool. It's, like I said, this came really close to being my favorite thing. And the only reason it isn't my favorite thing this week is because this was released. And this is the third volume of the Elric Saga, Michael Moorcock's Elric Saga. This is The White Wolf, which contains a trilogy of novels about Elric that came out in the early 2000s. And so that is really awesome. So this is the third and final volume of the Elric Saga, but not really, because in December, Michael Moorcock has a brand new Elric book coming out. And I think it has some stuff in that book that was published before, but there's also new stuff in that book from what I understand. So not the last Elric book, even though it's the last of this, the Elric Saga series. One more Elric book at least coming out in December. So that's cool. I look forward to that as well. But this is awesome. I love Elric, and this edition is great. This has the map of Elric's world. Does this have any illustrations in it? I didn't even check. This book is really big. This is the biggest volume of the Elric Saga so far. I don't see any. There probably are, though. What do I know? Anyway, it's extra cool anyway, the Elric Saga. So yeah, that's everything. That's everything this time. See, Roger and I really controlled ourselves very well, as always. Okay, my friends, I will see you around here at the Manor the next couple days. I've got some cool things planned. I missed a couple days, so I missed Tag Tuesday. So I'm probably going to have. What day is it? It's Friday. I probably will have a Tag Saturday and something else on Sunday. That's all going to be scheduled incorrectly, and then is Halloween. Then we've got our Varney the Vampire Halloween special that Roger and I will both be appearing in. It's going to be exciting. Okay, guys, thanks for stopping by. I will catch you next time.